it was fairly complete. One of the few complete vessels that we did find. We were able to excavate numerous rooms at Furnace Flats, and some of the artifacts are pretty remarkable. The painted pottery that you see here tells us how old the site is and what culture may have inhabited this part of the river. And just beautiful decorations on some of this pottery. Matates and manos. This is the mano, and this is matate, and these are grinding implements. You can grind up, of course, food like corn, beans, and squash. You can also grind minerals and pigments for painting the pottery. This style is open trough here, and it tells us that it was probably primarily used for grinding corn, which is not surprising because the people who lived at Furnace Flats, we think, are farmers who are using the floodplain of the river and the delta at Unkar Creek to grow crops, agricultural crops. Some of the more unique and interesting artifacts came from one particular house that we think may have been a craftsperson's house, and just dozens of these small ceramic discs. So when a pot breaks, it breaks into small fragments that we call sherds, and the people were taking the sherds and fashioning these small discs from them, and they have been interpreted possibly as gaming pieces, and we find them decorated or plain or corrugated with the bumps on the pottery, and lots of these things. And we weren't sure if the people in this house were making them just for themselves or making them for the whole village, or were they actually producing those and trading them for other things to their neighbors. Other unique artifacts, pieces of shell that have been fashioned into little decorations, animal figurines, and just little geometric designs. And also these pieces of calcite. It's a mineral that we find at the Grand Canyon. We haven't found the source of these, but talking with some of the local geologists, the calcite has its origins in groundwater, and when it precipitates out, it forms this nice crystalline mineral. And also the green color may come from how the groundwater flows through and staying this nice green color. What they were doing is fashioning jewelry pens from them. And so in the house we found where the robbers reached the plastic. We found where they served we found every stage that a piece would go through to fashion one of those pendants, all the way from the raw material to some of the complete pendant pieces that would have been used as jewelry. Pretty fantastic, and it tells us that in this one village that people weren't there seasonally, or they weren't there just intermittently, but that they were probably permanent residents along the Colorado River, and that they had been there for a long time. And also, for me, it says that there's more to life at this time than just work and farming. That we have gaming pieces and you have jewelry. These are people who had a real life. There was more than just work. There was play, and there was recreation, there was entertainment, and the like. It's pretty neat to think about what life may have been like at that time in that place, and this helps us imagine better what that may have been like for people. More excavations, this time at a site called the Palisades. Very unique, again, in that what we see on the surface at this site was not what we got during excavation. Here you can see us during the initial stages of excavation clearing off the top few centimeters or inches of soil, and better defining the stone foundations that are located at that site. And one of these structures was circular in shape. It had very nicely laid up masonry or stone and the soil mortar. And come to find out, and through consultation, that this was actually a kiva, or a subterranean ceremonial room. And this again was a remarkable discovery for its preservation, for the different artifacts that we found there, but also for the fact that for this particular time in this particular area of the Grand Canyon, there aren't a lot of known kiva structures that have been identified. Some of the artifacts that came from that room and other places at Palisades, again, a lot of grinding implements, tools, metates and manos, grinding slabs, telling us that people were relying fairly heavily on grains for their primary food source, corn, beans, squash, and other stone tools and pottery. Some of the best projectile points or arrow tips that we have seen came from this site, and I've always wondered if these people are primarily farmers and they're growing corn, beans, and squash, why would they need arrows and bows and arrows and projectile points? Well, it's commonly understood that even though farming people rely heavily on agricultural foods, but they also do quite a bit of hunting of small game to supplement their diet with the protein. And so it's not surprising that you find the arrow points and the stone knives and the scraping tools that would have been made. And it's a complementary toolkit that's consistent with both farming and hunting. Again, I mentioned the artifacts or the ceramic artifacts that we found. Those are very useful for telling us how old the site is and also what cultures may have produced those. And it's really not the decorations or how pretty they are or how big the pot is, but it's really this concept of context. Archeological context is the idea that it's not the individual artifact that we find, but it's where we find it in relation to other artifacts and where we find it in relation to places in the stone houses or out in front of the houses. And so context for us is key, so we don't get as excited about the individual artifacts as we do about how many of this particular type of sherd we find in comparison to this particular type. And it's really the bigger picture of the artifact in relation to everything else at the site that is the most informative. But still, you can't help but be amazed when you uncover and discover well-painted pottery and the remains of complete vessels at these sites. Another site we were fortunate to work at, this one near Ankar Delta. Ankar Creek comes out in this area. This is the big delta in Ankar Rapid. The South Rim of Grand Canyon is up here, so Desert View Watchtower is just out of the picture up here. This is a site we call the Evo site. And once again, we were amazed at how well preserved the architecture was there and how well preserved the artifacts were. And just the fact that what you see on the surface is not always what you get when you take the time to carefully excavate and uncover. And come to find out, what we see in this arroyo where part of that stone house was being eroded was just the end of a very large block of rooms that occupied a bench above the river. So all that work we did for a few weeks amounted to just a very small fraction of the entire site there at Evo's. And for us, that's consistent with our policy in the park to not excavate unless we absolutely need to, and when you do excavate, do it very carefully, and don't excavate the entire thing unless you absolutely need to. You can learn, we can learn exactly what we need to learn by looking at a very small fraction of the complete village. And at Evo's site, those stone houses again had some pretty remarkable architecture with the stone, the local stone, and the soil mortars.